Salutations and welcome to Raj Blue for Dummies. Today we'll be talking about D-Day and its effects. And if you don't already know what it is, you're D-U-M dumb. But then again, that's probably why you're watching this.
What are you typing? Yeah. What's a D-Day?
Well, that's a good question. D-Day was a deciding day in World War II when the Allies took... Are you through?
Wait, no, I'm not actually. Do you like this one more? Yeah, I like that one. Yeah, me too.
Anyways, D-Day was a deciding day in World War II when the Allies took back France from Germany. But before we start talking about that, let's set up the war up until this point. As you can see, Germany was occupying the majority of continental Europe, and the number of their troops was still significantly larger than France and Britain combined. After the incidents in the Pacific Theater, the United States had gotten involved in the war and helped with the planning to invade a French beach so as to liberate France. The Allies planned the invasion to happen in the dark, but they still needed the illumination of the full moon as well as the high tide that brought on. This meant they had roughly 1 week each month to launch the invasion. Although the Allies originally planned to invade Normandy in May, due to inclement weather, they were forced to delay the invasion, and finally the date of June 5th was set for the attack. However, again due to inclement weather, the invasion was prolonged by another 24 hours. And now, let's intercept the telegraph for today.
Dear Führer Hitler, Normandy will be the site of the invasion. You must build the German troops there and strengthen the coast.
Oh look! Is General Rommel wasting his time telling Hitler to fortify the beach of Normandy? However, Hitler didn't listen to him, and this would become one of his biggest mistakes. Instead, he listened to Field Marshal von Rudolstein, who stated that they should fortify the French city of Calais. This blunder would eventually lead to Germany's defeat.
Little Hitler, such a scam!
Herr Hitler!
Where are they going to invade next? Wammel!
They shall attack Normandy! You buffoon! They will attack Calais! Stop your foolishness before you cause our defeat!
Von Rundstedt is right. Plus, he's never made fun of any of my plans before.
But...
No, Wammel! No! Little Hitler, such a scam!
As we just saw, Hitler's favoritism would lead to his destruction not soon thereafter. Anyways, the Allies planned to attack 5 parts of the beach. The codenames of each portion were Utah, Sword, Omaha, Juno, and Gold. The Americans' areas were Utah and Omaha, while the Canadians and British took Gold, Juno, and Sword. The invasion began with overnight parachuters and glider landings, massive air attacks, and naval bombardments. This was actually the first war in which paratroopers made their debut. Because the Germans didn't expect an attack so soon after the inclement weather, many German commanders weren't present at the beginning of the Normandy invasion, including, wait for it, General Rommel. While his troops were being butchered, Rommel was busy schoolie pooping with his wife.
Mr. Blue, what is this scoodly pooping?
There'll be another for Dummies, and believe me, we'll be getting down and dirty into those specifics. But before this gets too off topic, let's get back to the D-Day invasion. The objective of the Allies during this invasion was to recapture Paris and Caen, thus liberating France. A small portion of the American troops headed west, while the majority of the troops headed east. The British and Canadians went through Belgium, Britain's little brother, and the Netherlands, while the Americans went straight towards Germany. Now off to our military expert Montgomery with more details on the actual invasion.
Allies began to storm the beaches, and the surprised Germans retaliated. After the first day alone, the Allies faced anywhere from 10,000 to 15,000 casualties, while the Germans faced anywhere from 4,000 to 9,000. The reason the Germans faced less casualties was because the majority of their forces weren't focused there, but rather at the Channel. However, in terms of percentage, the Germans faced much larger losses than the combined armies of the Allies. The Allies landed over 850,000 men and 150,000 vehicles in Normandy as their invasion progressed. The Allies continued to press through France, and the Germans faced even greater casualties. Just by the end of June, General Rommel reported that he had lost nearly 250,000 men.
Because of the initial attack, the Germans were scattered and the majority of their forces...
Wrong camera, Raj!
Whoops. The Germans were too scattered from the initial attack, and because their forces were not focused on Normandy, they were not able to push back the Allies. This invasion would prove to be more beneficial than the Allies had previously thought. Before the American troops arrived in Europe, the Allies' troops were dwindling in numbers and in morale. The new troops provided the much-needed support in numbers and morale. Finally, on July 9th, the Allies captured Caen. This was a huge shift in the war, and soon after the recapture of Caen, the Americans captured Paris on August 8th. From here on out, the Germans were never able to regain their footing and lost their momentum, kind of like this.
The Jew in Judy. The Canadians and British began to advance towards the Low Countries after the Americans had liberated Paris. They were surprisingly attacked in Belgium, and what would later be known as the Battle of the Bulge began. Unfortunately for the Germans, the Allied army was huge in comparison, and with their boosted morale, the Allies completely blew back the Germans in a decisive victory and continued on their liberation mission. The Allies completely denied the Germans. Speaking of deny...
You're right. That's a fifth floor problem.
Not in my house. No, no, no. Not today.
This victory was momentous because it was essentially the finishing blow to the already disheartened Germans. The German losses in this battle were critical in several respects. The last of the German reserves were now gone. The Luftwaffe had been shattered, and the remaining German forces in the west were being pushed back to the defensive of the Siegfried Line.
Now back to you, Brown Sugar.
I'm not quite so sure how to respond to that one, Montgomery. Anyways, the effects of D-Day were monumental. The Germans faced huge casualties and lost a large chunk of their army. Soon, they even ran out of their reserves. With such a large army for the Allies, they were able to press forward and liberate German holdings, thus boosting the morale and causing them to press forward even more aggressively. Our chief historian Penelope, with a P pronounced like in pterodactyl, will tell you more about these effects.
This constant attack by the Allies prevented Hitler from sending troops from France to build up his eastern front against the advancing Soviets. These setbacks showed the instability of the German army, and partisan activity against enemy occupation began to dramatically increase. Although the Allies faced a greater number of casualties, the size of their army made those losses seem minuscule in terms of the percentage when compared to the Germans. The advancement of the troops also allowed supplies to be delivered to France by strengthening the Allied forces even more.
All of this eventually led to the defeat of Germany and the Allied victory of World War II. D-Day was a huge battle that completely turned the tide of the war and allowed the Allies to completely devastate the Germans, and soon afterwards Hitler was killed. Now that I think about it, we should really create a statue for whoever killed Hitler. And now off to Merle with the weather.
I thought you said feather.